Awesome. So we are live. Namaskar. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Aditya Soma's channel here. We talk a lot about real estate investing, real estate sales, and financial freedom. And today I have a special guest, whom I wanted to have a conversation for a while to dig more into the story, uh, who is, doing a lot of big things, but started very small, started working full time and got into student rental. From there, got into contracting, new developments. Now, host of one of the biggest, podcasts here in Canada related to real estate, the Andrew Hines Real Estate Podcast, where he shares a lot of knowledge about bird strategies and bring on some great, guests sharing their stories. So I'm really excited to have you, Andrew, here. Thank you so much for your time, first of all. So,
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
yeah, and for people who don't know you, who are you? How did you get into real estate?
Well, I've always been, pretty curious and pretty stubborn. I guess those are two attributes that I've had. So, as far as how I got into real estate, it was just acknowledging that I saw people doing things smarter than my parents. So my parents kind of, they grew up like when I was being raised. I remember hearing my parents, talk about money and how they couldn't afford things, and I'm like, I don't want to ever do that. So as I got into high school, I'm like, I'm going to do things different. I'm going to go to school, if I need to get my PhD, because back then I thought that that's how you get a lot of money. My mom was always an entrepreneur, didn't make a ton with it, but she always ran this small home business. So I was kind of brought up in that, and I knew what it was like to kind of write your own schedule. So it got me thinking, what am I going to do? What's the entrepreneurial route? Ultimately, I went to business school. I got to university. I went into the business stream because I couldn't think of anything else that would be useful. And then I got accepted to Ivy for my third and fourth year. Thinking that, I'll go to one of the country's best business schools, and, that'll teach me how to be an entrepreneur. Then I'll know, like what angle I should take. Went out having absolutely no clue. But along the way, I saw my roommates, I saw, friends of mine living in these houses out in front of the gates at Western, and they were paying $500 a room. There were 80 bedrooms on that corner, all owned by the same guy. So I was crunching rough numbers, and I figured out he must have been making, I forget the number now, but it was like well over $100,000 net.
Wow.
And that was more than my parents made. And this guy didn't have to work for that. Like, the buildings just made the money. So at that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I don't know how. And I'll figure it out one day, figure out how. So I taught for 2 years at Western, an entrepreneurship type course. It's like a survey course for business. So it's finance, marketing, operations, organizational behavior, and general strategy. And so 2 years of that, get done that. I met my now wife, and we were talking, and, what does your mom do? Oh, she's a mortgage broker and a real estate investor. Sure enough, I end up getting my mortgage license and going and working under her. And everything followed from there. And I know we'll get into more details of what I've done in real estate since.
Definitely. That's a kind of a lot of people on the same boat, right? Like, we don't want to, we want to be successful. We don't want to do what our parents have done because, at least they know what they know. They don't know any better. But with the technology and all those things, like we have now room of a lot of opportunities out there. So, and I love that, looking into where you are, looking at what you're renting. So, are you? Is this a university located in London or?
Yeah. So everything I've bought, with the exception of Ohio and now Florida and some other stuff I'm working on, like recently,
Yeah, I want to get into that
London.
US investing as well. So, yeah, awesome. And so, what did you do then? Like, how did you get into that student rental? So you learned about this guy who is having 100,000 plus making income. So how did you bought your first property?
Well, okay, so this was before I actually knew Carlo, I think. And so Carmen kind of encouraged me. I was working various mortgage files. It happened to be that a client came across the desk that they weren't going to qualify for a mortgage, but we could work something out with them and rent the property to them. So that was my first property. Bought that one. Just a little house, like $130,000 on the east end of London, back when you could get one for 130, detached home.
When was this? What year?
2011.
2011. Got it.
So then, I bought that first one, saved up every dollar I had, not even setting any money aside for the income taxes. Oh, sorry. My wife just came home. So anyway, so yeah, saved up everything I had, bought one more property for like 200,000. And then I was like out, and I'm like, okay, now what? I didn't know how to do the BRRRR strategy. So then next year rolls around. I met another client that was an investor investing in Ohio. I'm like, hey, can I come with you one day? And I just like, he drove through Burlington. I jumped in his pickup truck. We went down to Ohio and talked the whole way. Talked about the cash flow, and Ohio was a mistake for me in a lot of ways, but I learned a lot. I just didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But in that time frame, also doing development, like all these things. So I was just trying to like put my knowledge to work because I was out of money, and kind of grasping at different things. And I had that shiny object syndrome a bit. But long and short is like I tried to develop a property in London as well, and got my hands slapped and ended up having to hold onto this property for many years to recover it. And at the same time, the Ohio stuff went south. Like a property manager stole from me, house got destroyed, like just ridiculous stuff that, would break most people. Then I was out of the game. I said, no more. Like, a year and a half, I was just like, okay, no more real estate, because all it does is get me burned. And I'm paying off, stuff from many, many years ago. But I saw Carlo doing what he was doing, and I knew him. I kept in touch with him. And then between him and my mother-in-law, I'm like, well, there's too many people crushing it in real estate for me to just write it off. I got to get back in. And that was like 2014. I go back to teach at Western for a bit. And then at the end of it, I was just, the whole time I was sizing up the market, who was doing what was working, making calls, doing my research. And then as soon as, I guess it was like April, actually it was, so May 1st, I closed on my first student rental. And that was, I already had the permit approved. Oh, actually, no, not on that one. That was something I figured out later, but I had the permit approved within like 2 weeks from then, and off to the races. I had that house finished and rented out to students by September, and I kept that going, like that 2 to 4 month transition of taking houses, doing pretty intense renovations to them, building additions. And that was my first project. My first student rental project included an addition that I actually built on.
Oh, wow. So, I just want to pick your brain on going, just a backtrack on your first transaction. So like, did you buy all cash, or how did you manage the funds for buying it?
The first one, I probably shouldn't say this on the air, but it didn't require a full 20%. We'll put it that way.
Got it. So
CMHC was helpful there.
So you use the first-time home buyer opportunity.
Yeah, the principal residence. Yeah, I was pretty new to the game. I mean, that's not something I would ever encourage clients to do. I know people do that all the time. Like, at the time,
I started. Yeah, I started with the same thing. Not in 2001, in 2017. But similar thing, right? Like, I mean, my intentions was to move into the property, and I moved in for 3 months, and then
they're like, what's and I was playing that. I'm like, well, what's move in? I'm like, a day.
Because it's a thin line, right? Like, if your intentions are to move in, you can still buy that first time property for 5% down, because you didn't own anything.
And right, most investors are going to realize, like, you can get away with that once, but if you have a track record of doing that, and I saw this as a mortgage broker, like agent, like, eventually people get flagged if they do it repeatedly, and they're just like, okay, well, you're clearly not moving into these, so no. So
yeah, exactly. But if it's a first one, right, like you never owned anything and you want to do something,
right?
So your amount of cash needed from your pocket was very, very less, and
that was very minimal. City. Yeah, that was.
And you're living in the same city, so your intentions maybe matches with the lender. Yeah, so guys, and whoever watching live, feel free to throw your questions in here. Again, Andrew have a lot of knowledge about Toronto, London market, and construction, BRRRR strategies, US investing. So we can get into all those things. But feel free to jump in and ask your questions. So we'll start with the first question here. Mohit, he's asking, hey, I'm really fascinated by your videos. Oh, thank you, Barry. I want to start as a real estate agent, and I'm just not ready to leave my 9 to 5. Please suggest. So, Andrew, I think you would be the good one to start on this one, because you also quit your job, right?
Right. Yeah. Not as an agent, but I mean,
But yeah,
just in terms of agents I see, like a lot of them kind of have that job on the side. They start and they do both for a little bit, and then they get
mhm.
enough traction. They finally pull the cord, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I see that because you don't want to be one of those desperate for a commission, licking your chops to close a deal because you need to get paid. You never want to be in that scenario because
yeah.
that's not good.
So when did you quit your job?
Well, it's like, did I ever have a job? Um,
Like,
I worked for Western, but it was a contract, so it ended. So I started
got it.
2008 to 2010 April, and
Mhm.
then it was like, what was I going to do next? I really didn't know. So I was on EI for a bit, and then I got my license as a mortgage agent, and I wasn't
Which is
sure that
also
that was
pretty
what I
much
was
like a
supposed to
sales,
do.
pretty
It's
much
still
a sales.
self-employed. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
eventually I ended up working in the office, but it was, yeah, there was this huge moments of like just anxiety, like, am I going to make money? And so I was that guy that like, just like Carmen had to tell me, she's like, don't spend anything, like just wait, you'll get there, money will come. And so I kind of had to be really, really patient with that. And then again, I did that again when I went out of the office. So I wasn't getting leads from the office anymore. I went out on my
Mhm.
own to raise my own business. And I went like 4 months without getting paid, or 5 months or something like that. It was ridiculous. But then it finally started to go.
Yeah, and
This
how did you manage, like, still buying investment properties when you're like, doing mortgages, because you're still at this point, like, you're self-employed.
Right. Well, I mean, back then it was a lot easier. I mean, that was like 10 years ago. Like you showed two NOAs that had money, and that was good enough. I don't know how the guy got it done, but I gave him my NOAs and he got me a mortgage. So
Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't even me doing. I never did my own mortgages ever. Just didn't. I never felt comfortable doing them.
Yeah,
So
makes sense. I
yeah,
think
it's
going
weird. Like it's like a doctor wouldn't operate on themselves. Like I don't really. I like the barrier.
That totally makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. And Mohit, to answer Mohit's question, right? Like, to start, if you're like interested to start start as a real estate agent, which is a sales job, sales business, self-employment, and if you're not ready to quit your job, I would say, just like what Andrew said, start part-time,
Hmm.
or start investing, have that build that confidence. Once you have that confidence, it could be 6 months or one
Yeah.
year. When I quit my job, I had like three investment properties, and I was like, I had 100,000 debt, apart from the mortgages. um, and I said, like, for me at that point was like, I do I want to do it now when I have, like, super passionate, and I was like, I don't know where the money gonna come. I don't know if I'm gonna make sales from the real estate commissions. But if I give my all in for 1 year, instead of having that 100,000 debt, maybe I'll have 150,000 debt if I don't make anything in that 1 year. But what's the upside? What if I can make it happen? What if I can, start making commissions? I did my math. Like, all I need was one or two sales a month to have the same income I was having, which was like, close to 100,000. So that's what I would suggest. Like, maybe, if you have some funds sitting aside, like a line of credit or something, if you have 20, 30, 40,000, take a risk, jump in full time. But if you cannot, if your instincts doesn't allow you to, maybe start part time. Once you start doing, you never know, you might enjoy it, you might start see the momentum, then quit the job and do it full time, because if you're full time, people trust you more.
Oh yeah,
um, and
definitely.
here's a question probably you can answer way better on this one, because your niche is student rental when you started. So Shri is asking top three issues one would end up facing as a student investor.
Okay, so it would depend. Early on, like the one house I had rented it out to students, it wasn't meant to be, and this was the house that was supposed to be torn down. So it got like renovated, and I was more or less just managing it because ultimately the investor that put in the money needed to get his money back. So it was just a big mess. But these kids, like, they just wanted a cheap place. They had paintball fights inside the property. So the biggest challenge that you're going to have, and I know this from experience and what I lived in and what I've managed, is that the worse your property looks and the less appealing it is, the less care the landlord has for it, the worse the students are going to treat it. It's going to attract a lower quality student that doesn't care, and they're going to abuse that property, and your headaches are going to be nonstop. Also, the older property, the other big challenge with that is more things break. You're going to have more calls, and if you don't have a good team, if you don't have a maintenance guy that's ready to go jump out there, you'll find yourself hating it and getting out of it. Where I hit my sweet spot, I was doing newly renovated properties, and I had a construction team on the ground. So I had like handymen that could go and fix properties, do little this and that for me. I had, my plumber contacts. So it was really just about building out my team, my Rolodex, and then making a product that people would be proud of, like proud to live in. So spending more on the finishes, giving them stainless steel, quartz, doing ensuite bathrooms is something I did. These are all things that it makes kids actually like want to brag to their friends about their place. And if they're bragging to their friends about their place, they're not destroying it. And
Yeah.
I really just had to understand, and I got a lot of that from living it, in London, going to Western and seeing how much money is there and how many kids come from very wealthy families in the GTA, and their parents are paying the bill. $600, $700, $800 a month is nothing to their parents who are paying that bill. And then, of course, it's just about making sure that the kids are happy with what they've got. So, biggest challenge is having an inferior product and not having a good team. Those would be the top two, and then three, I'd have to think about that some more. But I think I've given you enough there.
Yeah, no, I love that because it technically you're having a luxury student rental, not like
Mhm.
a rough student rental, right?
Yeah, because there are the student rental slumlords out there,
Yeah,
and that's a game that works. I rented from one when I was in school, and he had tons, and it works for him, I guess. It's not something I ever wanted anything to do with, though.
yeah, and you raised that great point, having a right team, because that's a make or break. I have seen like
Yeah,
many investors, especially they come and invest from like Toronto or Vancouver, different
yeah,
cities, but because they didn't spend time to build a team, have
yeah.
a group of people they can call when there is some issue, or
Right.
having a manager, or all those
Yeah.
things. And another thing probably I have seen is not having a regular cleaning services for students. Do you provide something?
I don't, but just to jump back a little bit, the other thing is not having enough money in your account to pay for good help.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, I constantly let it grow. Like I'd be like, I would say 10,000 is my minimum for my accounts, and then some more cash flow going. And I'd say, you know what, I feel a lot more comfortable with 15,000 in the account for each property. So if I got, two properties, I got $30,000 cash sitting ready
Yeah.
in case. That's probably overkill. You probably don't need that much. But for me, that was just to feel comfortable. If something went wrong, all of a sudden I need a new roof and it's $15,000. Well, where's that money coming from? What if I need a new furnace? So I would never stress, like a fridge breaks. Here's the appliance repairman. Have him call me for a credit card over the phone. There's a leak in the middle of the night. Here's my 24-hour emergency plumber. If they contact me, like I'd send them an email with a procedure, but they'd still contact me until they got to know me and knew the process. So I just direct them. I'd say, hey,
Yeah.
I can't do anything from here. Call these guys. They have my credit card on file, or, I have a billing account set up with them. They'll come out. And then I'd have like one handyman. If it wasn't an emergency, he could come out and he could fix most things. Locked the door on my bedroom. That's one of those annoying ones that would happen. And I'd say, hey, $25 or $40 or whatever, just to cover his time, because he's got to come out and cut you a key.
Yeah.
But
So
those are the kind of things that happen. Like, it's once you have a nice product and you just get on a routine, and then that stuff all just gets very easy.
yeah, and do you manage your own properties?
I started off not. I've had a mix. Like for my residential, that's pretty well always been that I managed them. Maybe for a short 2-year period, I had a manager helping, and it just never made sense. So then with the student rentals, I was just doing so much on the construction side, and I hadn't had a chance to build out my management kind of procedures and systems. So for a while there, I was renting through a manager. And then there came a point in time where my construction on my renos kind of slowed down a bit, and I felt like it was the time to make the switch. And I built out my systems. I got my automatic withdrawal. I created, I learned a lot from Carlo and how he was managing his stuff, and kind of adapted it
Mhm.
for myself. And that was kind of that first year that I did that, because I had 3 or 4 properties all turning over. I remember calculating I saved like $12,000 just for renting out my own product and getting the same amount of money that my manager would have got.
Wow.
And then I had one other property, which he told me he could only get $750 a bedroom, and I got it for $860 a bedroom. So I got an extra $660 a month for a 3-year lease. I mean, there was just all that, like, it really came to that. Like, I had this conversation, and it just turned out that our visions of where my properties were going and what they could do and how good they could be, we had a different vision. So I just figured it was time to make a change. That manager wasn't exactly a great fit just because he didn't see it the same way I did. So I made that change then, and it was really just systems. And once you have systems, like, eventually I hate to say train, but you almost train your tenants on what to do,
Yeah.
and then they don't call you. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. I mean, any of my
So,
properties, my family stuff, like, I don't really get calls. It's pretty cool.
but if I'm a newbie looking
Mhm.
into student rental, what would you suggest? Like, I have no idea about the systems, but I would love to. I love the cash
Mhm.
flow that I can make from the student rental. Would you suggest me start managing the property by myself and
Oh,
learn
I
how
don't
to build
think.
a system?
I mean, it depends on how much time you're willing to put in, right? Because everything's a factor of how much time you got. And if you don't have the time,
Yeah.
then you go with a manager. If you've got the time and nothing but time, and you're building a construction company and you already have a team, and you think that there's some sort of synergy there where you can just bridge over and allow that team to kind of help you in your management, then maybe you do it in that circumstance. But I think it helps to go with a really reputable, good manager for a couple of years, learn their systems, learn what's working and what's not,
Mhm.
and then go from there. But don't go in blind. Like, you need to have somebody showing you what best practices are. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. I didn't have to invent the wheel because I had, a community. I had,
Yeah.
my property manager who they were doing a lot of things great, and then some things I didn't like. And then I had, Carlo, who was doing a lot of things that I got some inspiration from, and I kind of merged all that and it created something that really worked for me.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, like especially for who's looking to start their investment or just have one or two properties, having a community. Like, so how did you find your community? Group of people that are investing, or how did you get into that?
So London had, I forget what it was called. There was like this little meetup. They'd meet up at a pub, and that was going on way back in like 2012 or whatever. So Sean Allen, actually, some people might know that
Yeah,
name. He used to go
yeah,
to
of
that, and
course.
I met him way back then, like 2012, 2011. I forget the year.
Oh
Um,
wow! So since then they
yeah,
had
since before he was the real estate tycoon that he is today. Um, so yeah, I would go to that. I met a bunch of people. That really started to pick up steam in like the 2015, 2016 timeframe, and really grew. Matt McKeever
yeah.
used to go out there, and then they started their own London on Fire out of there. I never went to that one, but it was like some of that stuff. And then networking event, I met Carlo at an Ivy networking event. Hugely impactful, helped me in a lot of ways. Um, and other than that, it's been creating my own network. With the podcast has been a big help for me in kind of expanding my level of thought, expanding what I believe is possible, and kind of taking things to the next level. Trying to remove myself operationally from a lot of what I do. That all came in the last few years, and kind of has led to some of the decisions I've made more recently.
Yeah, that's sounds very simple. Honestly, like it's that simple. Actually, even for me, it's the same thing. Like when I started investing, I have no clue, and I didn't had any friends who was investing. All I
Mhm.
did was like real estate networking events in Windsor, Ontario. That's what the search I did, and I found WinCity at that time. My partner who started the WinCity Investor Club, we were just meeting once in a month, playing cash flow game and just talking about different strategies,
Yeah.
what challenges going through. So that's a really good way to um, keep in the loop and just learn and be in the community. Here we got a Prabhu Silva asking question: if I want to keep my 9 to 5 and have 30K in cash, how would I do anything that will cash flow or at least break even and pay itself? How would I do anything? Probably maybe referring to a cash flow property. Probably maybe you got to elaborate your question a little bit better. If my understanding is correct, like finding an investment property for 30,000 cash. Um, if you can jump on that.
Okay, so I think I'm following the question. You've got 35 or 30 cash and wondering what to do. One thing I would not be doing is putting that cash into a real estate investment. If you're talking about quitting your job, you're going to need that. Um, I think everybody's different, but I had to learn something about myself and what it was that would allow me to sleep. And if you put every dollar you have into something and you have nothing to pay for dinner and for rent, the amount of stress that will create in your mind will prevent you from being successful. Because if you live in fear, you can't be successful. And it
Yeah.
was one of the things I had to learn. I had to learn, like I was like reading like the Napoleon Hill and understanding that. And that was one of the things that I learned out of that book, is like you can never be successful if you're worried about loss or what you don't have. So that make sure you structure yourself so that you're not worried about that. For some people, I've coached people. It's like, go move in with your parents if you really want to do this. Like, cut your expenses to next to nothing so that you give yourself the ability to focus. It helps if you date somebody or are married to somebody that doesn't have expensive tastes and will allow you to do this experiment. Or if you're single, then all the better. Go get some roommates or move in with mom and dad, and then focus on learning everything you can, consuming every piece of content you can, become an expert in an area or in a type of property, explain the concept, and then go find a deal, tie it up, and go find an investor and partner and have them put in the money and you do the work. And that's how you get your feet wet. And a lot of times that's going to be friends and family because they trust you more than strangers to start.
Yeah.
Once you get a track record and a reputation and you share your story on social media, now all of a sudden other people are throwing money at you and saying, hey, can I invest?
Yeah.
So that's the short version of how I would approach that if that's what I had.
Yeah, I think great advice, really great advice. Start living under your means, right? Like, yeah, I can relate to that totally. And just trying to connect back with what you just shared before, having that 10,000 or 15,000 per property. I'm the same. Like, I always keep that, at least have access to that
Mm-hmm.
much of money on for each property, because you never know where the issues come up. Um, Going back to his question, so now if you have 30-40K, and if you don't own any properties and you have a job, you want to keep the job,
Mm-hmm.
you might qualify for primary residence, and if you go buy a
Yeah.
3 or 4 or 5 bedroom house or a duplex, live in one bedroom,
Yeah.
rent out the other bedrooms. That's another way. Like, if you qualify for a 500,000 property in London or Windsor, you can
Yeah.
still find properties around that price, which need only
There you go.
25% down.
Great idea. That one of the
Close
things I wish
5%.
One of the things I wish I'd done is when I got my teaching contract, it was only a 2-year contract. I wished that I had bought a property in London right when I started that and then just got roommates, because I ended up living with roommates from university and renting while I did that 2-year contract. If only I had known, I would have had a student rental in the bag. Yeah, I think that's a great house hack, right? If you
Yeah,
can get
exactly.
roommates and then you live for free. I've heard of so many people doing this, and I always,
Yeah.
kicking myself for not having done this when I had the opportunity.
Personally, I did the same. Like, even I
Mhm.
was married, even I convinced my wife. We bought a duplex, and the duplex was 3 bedroom on the main
Mhm.
floor. I rented out that three bedroom, and upstairs there was another 3 bedroom unit. I lived in one bedroom, me and my wife, and
Mhm.
we had like separate living area and shared the kitchen. We rented out the other 2 bedrooms. We were making positive $500 cash flow
Yeah.
by living in it.
Oh yeah. My
So
my
again,
wife wouldn't
if
allow me to live in any sort of house hack, unfortunately. But so we have to
no, I
find
mean,
other ways.
yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, now, yeah, now my wife said no more tenants.
Yeah,
Even if you give me a small house, I will live in that. I would not rent. But again, that's the thing, right? Like, you gotta do
yeah,
what it takes to at the position where you are in.
yeah.
And here's another question. I know it's hard to get a place that cash flows, but can I get something that will at least positive cash flow? What are you seeing in London area right now?
So you just froze for a second there. So
Oh,
so
sorry.
it's I know it's hard to get a place that cash flows, but can I get something that at least pays for itself. So we're referring to London specifically?
Yeah. So, because you're the London expert, so let's start with London. I can share
Oh,
my side on Windsor.
not as much of an expert as I used to be, but for sure the rents have been going up like crazy in London. But I think that the house hack has become more and more of an essential element. I mean, it's possible to get something that'll break even. I definitely, hear some people who are a little bit more active there that are still doing that. But
Mhm.
I think you kind of got to be open to some alternative strategies, or you just got to go out and find a really good deal. Like people who aren't happy with no cash flow, go find that creative deal. Whether that's flyering, knocking on doors. Door knocking seems to be one of the most effective strategies for those who I know who do it. So it's all a matter, again, it comes down to time, how much time you got to put into it. If you don't have as much time, you might just have to find a really good realtor, investor-minded realtor that can help you in structuring something. And maybe it's go in, maybe you add a secondary unit, and that'll do it for you. So that's definitely still something you can consider, but it's definitely getting tight in London. Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, for me, like I'm not married to any one area. I go where the cash flow is or where it makes more sense to focus my energy, rather than go into a city. Like I've been speaking with one guy who's invested in the Vancouver area. And I'm like, well, talk about a recipe for just extreme difficulty to get cash flow. I mean, you're going to have a lot of challenges there. And, that creates challenges with the banks. So now the banks don't want to give you as much money. It's not necessarily going to be as easy to make fast progress. Whereas Windsor still has a lot more opportunity, a
Yeah.
lot more cash flow potential than London. Not to say there's anything wrong with London. It's just, needle in a haystack versus a stack full of needles. Which do you want to work with?
Yeah, I love that analogy. So what are you focusing like right now? Like, what type of properties are you looking at? Are you buying to for your, what are you adding to your portfolio right now? What type of
So
properties?
the Florida stuff, yeah, those are like new construction. So I'm kind of got my mind on Airbnb now as so you have primary Airbnb strategy and then a secondary rented out to family strategy. So what I'm doing in Florida is kind of a hybrid of kind of production building and selling for resale from scratch. So I bought a whole bunch of lots and I'm just kind of starting the first one. Gonna pull together a contract for the second one, and I have surveys on
Wow.
3 of them, so I can technically do all 3. I just got to kind of figure out how I'm funding all that.
Hmm.
Just firmed up on a trailer park up north. Again, we'll have an Airbnb component to it, and along with transient and camping, glamping, all this different stuff. Where I just see a lot of creative ways to create more cash flow, because the traditional go and buy a duplex and finish the basement and make positive 200 just seems slow to me. It's not that it's not great, but for my goals, I want to create massive cash flow quickly and create more and more freedom in my life.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm curious more about this US investing. So how did you
Mhm.
find this city, and what are the numbers looks like, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit more on your um, that lots that you're talking about?
Okay, so I went down to Florida
Hmm.
in January 2021, and just during the lockdown, we didn't want to stay for that, so we took a helicopter across the border, shipped our car across the
Oh,
border,
wow.
drove down, and we spent 3.5 months mostly in Florida, in the Naples, Fort Myers area. And I would just go to RIA meetings, so like real estate investor meetups. Finally, met the right guy who's doing new construction. I sampled a lot of strategies. Nothing really, stood out to me, but the price point down there seemed great in Cape Coral. So, stuff under $400,000 for good places with pools.
Oh,
So
wow.
what I bought, well, I have 5 lots right now. They're averaging around 25 to $27,000 a piece US,
Wow. And
and
they're like buildable lots
buildable lots. Yeah.
for 30,000, less than
Yeah.
30,000.
Yeah, they're going
Seriously.
up. I mean, I probably have to pay more now, but
Hmm.
so I just signed the first contract to build. It does have some escalation clauses, so it could go up a bit depending on some key components of the price. But it was 365, I think,
Hmm.
US to build, 1,880 square foot, 4 bed, 2 bath with pool and outdoor kitchen, 3 car garage. I think I said that. Yeah, so it's a nice place, stucco finish, like just a place that is currently selling, or there's seems to be some indication that would sell for about 500. So I'll be in for about 4, and so it's really just about scale that up, and then as I sell one, buy one, and just keep an inventory of lots and keep going.
So how are you gonna build there? Like you're gonna hire a builder there, or you're gonna hire some
Yeah,
trades that can do the same
yeah.
thing?
So I've never hired a general contractor, but this will be my first go.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
I've
it, got it.
already
So,
that was the whole point of partnering with this guy that I met down there, is that he was already in tight with this builder, and builders down there don't need any work. They don't need me.
mm,
So he, sort of vouched for me, and because I'm partnering with him, gets my foot in the door. And we had a candid conversation. I said, you know what, I am going to need to do this on my own too. So I'm happy to. I think it makes sense for us to work together on a deal, and then we'll figure it out
mhm,
from there. And he was cool with that. So he'll probably continue to sell whatever I build if I want to sell it. And then there'll be other stuff
mhm.
that I want to keep, and I'll just keep working to build a portfolio there. But then of course there's an active component, which I'm going to be applying for a U.S. Immigration visa. So that's
Got
a,
it.
a critical thing, is that I have an active income
Yeah,
strategy down there. Yeah.
that's what I was about to ask. Like,
Mhm.
how are you, what would be the, how are you finding, how can you fund those deals? Like, what is the lending process for Canadians over there? Are
Well,
you
the
buying
first
with in
one's
cash?
cash. Yeah, everything's cash so far, which is, yeah, why I said I had to figure out how to I feel getting a little cash rich on these.
Mhm.
But yeah, so
Even for
there
construction?
yeah, I'm financing it all, just because
Oh, wow.
they're the visa requirement. They don't like people who get into real estate and borrow. I know it sounds ridiculous, but like this was kind of the advice of the real estate lawyer, or sorry, the immigration lawyer I've been working with. He's like, he just said, real estate's a sticky one. They don't like giving those visas for that. So we kind of talked through it, and I said, well, what if I do one in cash? What if I do
Mhm.
that, and then I can do other stuff outside of that? So I'm kind of due for a follow up with him now that I've finally got the irons in the fire, and we've come this far along. I've acquired the property. So yeah, I'll definitely be borrowing for more, but it might be a strategy of borrow up here in Canada and send the money down. I just have to work it out with him, how that works. And then I can also potentially create like a subsidiary that can be a company that borrows, and that won't be a problem. So it's a, you got to consult the experts, and
Yeah,
kind of
of
figure
course,
the
of
the
course.
strategy.
Uh,
This is why we pay accountants and lawyers. Like, if I'm not trying to figure this all out on my own, although I have a pretty decent understanding of it, it's just yeah, work with your team, and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, again, that's a disclaimer, guys. We are
Mhm.
not a financial advisors, or we are
Mhm.
not. We are just a random people on YouTube talking strategies here. So
Mhm.
please consult your own experts. Here, let's take a question here. C sharp. I love that name. Probably a language. Want to invest in rental properties in a year or so. Bank requires 30% down because it's not my primary residence. Really, I'm single with a primary residence with a worth of over 1 million. What is the best broker or bank? Hmm. Um,
Mhm.
I'm surprised to hear that the bank would require you 30% down, because if you're
Yeah.
buying a residential property, what's
Well,
your
if
take
you're
on
if
that?
you're Canadian, you should be able to do more. There might be this
Yeah,
sliding scale element to getting up into higher price properties, but if you're just looking for investment properties, um, is that the idea? I'm okay. Yeah, wants to invest in a
yeah,
rental property, so yeah, you shouldn't need 30, 20 down.
20, yeah.
Worst case with a credit union, if you're a Canadian and you have Canadian credit established and you have Canadian income, then 25% with a 25-year M with a credit union. If you're going like more commercial, but yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do 20% down with a 30-year
Yeah,
amortization.
yeah, and especially if you're buying like a duplex or triplex or fourplex, which is making
Hmm.
income, so they take
That
the
helps.
property
Yeah.
income. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also like he's saying that he has a primary residency with over a 1 million worth. So probably you can even refinance that, have a HELOC line of credit. You can even use that line
Yeah.
of credit to buy, do a burst strategy maybe.
Yeah, get access to that capital and recycle it if that's your goal, right? If your goal is to create a significant nest egg for retirement, or potentially to retire on the rental income, I think speed is of the essence. So that's why that burst strategy comes in really handy.
Yeah, exactly. So, going back to your US project, what's the numbers look like once you construction is done? How much rent are you expecting to get from that doing Airbnb?
So that's actually still something I'm not completely sure. I've seen it all over the map. I've seen a rental in Cape Coral grossing over $100,000 a year, and then I've seen
What
other
for
ones.
one property?
Yeah, one single family
Wow.
property. Those are like the top performers. Like I paid for the AirDNA subscription for that area, and like did all my digging. So I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to make it nice enough. I think there's definitely potential for me to get it up, into definitely above 50,000 gross annually. I haven't really crunched exactly how the numbers will work out, but I know that they will work, just based on the fact that I'm going to be like all in on one of these for like $400,000. So
Yeah.
I know those numbers, and I know that I'll have a buffer. So that's kind of where my head's at right now. As far as the values go, like on this first one that I'm going to be selling it, I'll be in for about 400 with the lot, and
Wow. That
that'll be worth 500 based on current. And so go, 7 to 10 months down the road when I'm selling that, it should be worth probably more. We'll see.
Yeah. And I heard that Miami is like also the growth happening there is like pretty drastic. Like the population has been growing and the employment side.
Yeah, everyone wants to go to Florida right now. Politically, it's pretty much the most attractive place to be in the U.S., and economically, the most attractive place. Freedom, the most attractive place. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many reasons that Florida should continue to do well, and then add into the fact that like Cape Coral is one of like the most low-priced, fast-growing cities in the U.S. It's
Wow.
just there's so many reasons why I feel like fairly comfortable there. Nothing's perfect. I mean, there's risk in absolutely anything, but
Yeah. I mean,
for me, it made
you're an
sense.
investor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Investors always have risk
yeah,
coming from it, but you got to do your own calculations and
hmm
you know what's happening. Even personally, I invested in a passive investment project just recently, like a week ago, in Miami as well, like Bayview, Palms Beach,
hmm
in a condo, multi condo with a like a
okay,
bigger funds. It's just to learn. I'm putting like passive investment with the active investor. Probably you might know this. The cross Dan Crasby. Have you heard of him?
I'm
The
not sure I
Canadian
have.
Protein, the guy who owns Canadian Protein.
Hmm, I'm not
He's
sure.
actually he's known as a Lambo lapdog, who has a
Okay,
lot of
yeah, I've seen
Lamborghinis.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he is actually a Windsor guy who is buying like a combo pack, like 52 condos together, and he's raising funds from like friends and family, like within the community whom he
Yeah.
knows. Like, so I'm investing
Is
in
he
that
selling
project.
them
Like,
out? Like, is he going to resell them? Like, syndicate it?
yeah, so like, he's not selling, so he's syndicating it. So he's raising money to
hmm
buy.
To just
It's like
hold.
yeah, just to hold. Like their
Okay,
plan is to,
cool.
because he was telling the same thing. Like Miami is growing significantly,
Yeah.
um, in terms of population, jobs, and everything. So his plan is to keep the project. Slowly increase the rents. It's a turnkey property, already like 97% occupied. As soon as the lease ends, they can, like, the tenant law is a
hmm
lot different than here. It's a standard rentals. He's just gonna increase the rents once
hmm
whenever the leases end. They have like out of that 52 right now, like 10 to 15 units are ending their leases by end of this year.
Yeah.
So they can increase like each unit by $300 or something. So
Nice.
it's value add in, like kind of a burst strategy, but
Yeah.
yeah, in a bigger scale. So
Very
let's
cool.
take the next question here. Rami, hey Aditya and Andrew, I'm curious of your experience investing in properties far from where you live, like Ohio, and whether it's a good idea. So maybe you're the best one to talk on,
Yeah, I can
Andrew.
certainly tell you what not to do.
Yeah, yeah,
don't don't
love to
invest
hear that.
don't invest far away when you don't know what you're doing. If you are going to invest far away, then that means you need to go spend time in that place. So, um, whatever you got to do. I mean, I spent 3.5 months in Florida and didn't actually do anything or pull the trigger on anything until I think like 2.5 months. Like I've been going to events, like doing research nonstop, never felt comfortable, didn't move. With Ohio, I jumped in having only gone down there like 2 times, and that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that because I didn't know what I was doing. So you got to go down to a place, you got to go to meetups, you got to meet people, real people that have something to lose if they do things that are unethical. And you find out who they know. So go to RIAs. Like if I were to go back to Ohio, I would go to the RIAs. I'd meet property managers. I'd meet people who have had a long-standing reputation for dealing properly in business. And I would find out who they recommend, and I would work with those people, and that's how I would start to build. But yeah, that's a thing. I think people get so enticed, and a lot of Canadians go down to the U.S. based on hearing numbers that just sound too good to be true, and they are too good to be true because nothing comes true when you're buying junk that are in neighborhoods that no one will actually want. Like it sounds good to a Canadian because we don't have bad neighborhoods like people have in the US. Like there are really bad neighborhoods in the US that we just don't have equivalents for here. So I think we're a bit naive sometimes as Canadians, and that's one of those things we got to overcome. And the best way to do that is spend time in a place. So wherever you're going to invest, spend time there, and don't do it until you feel like you're ready. And if that means you got to take time off of work, take a little hiatus, take 2 months off or 3 months off, go rent an Airbnb or
Or
short-term
utilize the
rental.
work from home option nowadays.
Yeah, do something. Yeah, find a way to be there. Find a way to go to the events, meet the people, build your community before you act. Of course, you got to act, but you definitely got to put in the grunt work to be ready.
Yeah, I love that advice. Honestly,
Mhm.
like, that's one thing I learned hard way too. Like I got into new construction when I didn't know anything, and I just lost like 100,000, got out
Mhm.
80,000, and just got out because I
Mhm.
didn't learn anything enough. I didn't learn enough to, know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. So yeah, great advice. So if you guys like, like build your power team, at least come go in the weekends if you cannot go for like 2 months 3 months like Andrew, at least do the meetups
Mhm.
and find real people. So great advice. um Shuk, can you talk about the place that asking for an additional 100K or asking buyers to back away from pre-construction condo that they purchased in 2008? Shuk, honestly, I'm totally confused with your
Yeah,
question.
I'm not following, unfortunately.
Yeah, Shuk, you gotta just elaborate the
Yeah,
question
if you could
a little
resubmit
bit.
that question, yeah.
Yeah, properly. Probably it's a little bit harder to understand it. Let's take the other question here, Sam. Hey, Aditya, about my craftsman style 5 bedroom, 3 bath house in February 2021 in Walkerville area, Windsor. Do you recommend selling or refining and turning to a rental? So before I answer that, Andrew, what do you think about selling or refinancing? Because I know you have some stories there about selling or refinancing.
Well, I mean, if you like the asset, you want to keep it. Obviously, that's kind of your answer. But for me, I look at the fundamentals. Like, would I want to own that in 20 years? Will this serve if there is a major market correction? If there are fundamental changes in my market, will people want to rent this? Like, is this something that's like an ideal rental? Does it serve? Like, is it, if this is obviously an extreme example, but if it's a 10,000 square foot mansion that goes for $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month, that's not something I would want, because in an economic correction, that's going to rent for half price, and I'm not going to cash flow. So I'm looking for stuff that serves multitude of strategies that I can profit from. So I can have my A that's Airbnb, my B that's monthly rental and it'll cash flow, and then maybe my C is that I can sell it and maybe recoup most of my money, or I have some other form of strategy that might get me out relatively unharmed. So it's more of, do I have a plan A, B, and C for that property, or at least a solid A and B? And if
Yeah,
that's the case, then I'm comfortable looking at refinancing it and keeping it. Otherwise, yeah, if I don't feel good about my alternatives, or if I feel exposed, like if there was a correction here, for me with my student rentals, what if there's a decrease in enrollment at Western, and more people start going into trades, or what if there's another shutdown, and there's no in-person classes this spring or this fall? Is that something that I want to take, and what level of exposure do I have in my portfolio? Like if that's just one small bit of a bigger portfolio, fine, but if that's everything, then that's not really a risk worth taking in my mind. So I know that's probably long and drawn out, but
no,
I
but
like
that
family
honestly, that's
rentals.
a great advice in my opinion, because
Yeah.
if you think that your property can sustain for next 5 years, 10 years with a different strategies in a worst
Yeah.
case scenario, right? Like in simple terms.
Yeah. Look at the worst case, right? Because I mean, in Windsor, you can still get cash flow. So if you're cash flow positive, um, that means you can ride out the storm, right? Even if rents go down, say 20%, will you still be cash flow positive? Like, look at some of those numbers, play sensitivity on them. When all your eggs are in one basket, you just need to have a really good plan A, B, and hopefully a plan C. Like every which way, how am I going to profit out of this? How am I going to make money? How am I going to get out of it if I need to? Have that all thought out. But if that's the case, like that's the type of scenario where I would feel comfortable
Yeah.
refinancing and keeping, and hopefully even acquiring more in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and to just add on to that, Sam. So you said you bought it in February 2021. Have you done anything to the property? Because can you come out with a positive returns? You got to look at it that way. Because if you haven't added any value, you bought a turnkey property in 2021 February, and from May and June till now, there is not that much appreciation happened. But if you have added a huge value to it, and you want to pull your profits and put into different asset class that you have a better opportunity, then maybe selling might make sense. But if you cannot get your money out as of now, um, and your property is making great cash flow, then you got to ask. But at the same time, going back to you, why do you want to sell it? What's the reason? Because do you have any other personal reason? Are you looking for a
Mhm.
better opportunity? There are so many things to
Yeah.
answer before to give a conclusion that is it a good idea to sell, or
Yeah,
keep
too many
it.
variables. It's too
Yeah.
much of a personalized question, of course.
Yeah, and I heard a lot about great things about your new construction projects here in Canada. So how did you get into contracting?
So that was just because I was doing the student rentals, and it was basically that I wasn't able to find properties that didn't need additions that would be close enough to the school. So where other investors who had maybe a little bit more savvy when it came to the real estate market, they were getting the stuff that didn't need additions. I was kind of picking up the scraps, so to speak. So I was taking properties that maybe weren't quite as good physically, but they were in good locations. And I was just adding the additions. So I just got good at that. I just realized, hey, you know what? I'm pretty organized. I could do that. And I knew nothing about construction when I got started. And within 1 year, I had pretty well 1 year, I had formed my own construction company, and I was doing a 27 townhouse development
Wow.
and infrastructure. And
So
that's
you're building 27 townhouse for yourself or for other investors? Like,
no, so that was so my mother-in-law's development company, they had a builder that was doing it, and it was kind of going a little bit slow. He was kind of interested in getting, moving on and not doing it.
mm,
So there was two phases. So he kind of did the first. So he kind of just passed the baton to me, and she knew that I had a team in London and that I was doing things really quickly. So she was kind of keen on letting me have a crack at it. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what I'm doing on this scale, but I know that I have a team that does, and they can, in between all of us, we can learn what we don't know. And yeah, it was a baptism by fire. But I'm the type that if I get myself into something, I find a way. And that's always been the case. So, I mean, I guess that's why um, that whole taking a leap thing is advice a lot of people give. Because for me, when I do, it's sink or swim, and I swim.
so right now, is contracting is your like active business? Is it still, are you still running that business, or?
Yeah, yeah, I have. I did 15 towns over the last 2 years. After that 27 town project, I've done some other projects in between, like a basement or a single custom home. And now I'm just wrapping up 3 custom homes and about to start a commercial clubhouse.
Oh,
And
wow.
then there's another 28 homes probably to build next year and the year following. Ultimately, there's like 120 some odd houses. I think 126 less the 3 I built. So
Wow, you're a beast,
123.
man.
Yeah, that's not going to be any small task. I'm going to have to expand my team quite a bit to be able to facilitate that. But
So
again, I'm in it. I'll find a way.
Yeah. So if anyone here watching, listening this, if they are looking for a contractor in London, would you like help them out?
I don't really do much for hire. I do some coaching. Actually, we both know Marco.
Yeah.
I've helped Marco a bit in the early stages of what he was doing with his development and his construction planning. So I've done a bit of that. So technical
Mhm.
coaching on the construction development side. I don't really get into the individual one-offs,
Got it.
just
And
because of I'm not really geared to do that kind of thing. I'm more of a volume builder. And then of course with my own projects, that was really the original reason to have the team, was so that I could do my own projects and be
got it.
fully insured, had WSIB, had all that stuff, and
So
I could feel comfortable
if
sleeping at
someone
night.
have a developed land, have a 10, 15
Mhm.
plots that you want to build multiple houses, then you would be the guy to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to talk to me about something that they got going on, like I'm a make sense kind of guy. Like if you make me a
Mhm.
proposal and it makes sense to spend the time on, then
Mhm.
absolutely. A single house, that wouldn't be my bag, but bigger
Yeah.
scale stuff, of course.
Makes sense. And then I know Marco, very well. And I just did a video actually just
Yeah, I saw
two,
it.
3 weeks ago. He's
Mhm.
crushing it. And he told me you helped him really like to gear up and start his first construction. So,
Yeah, he's
uh,
funny. Like he only like I think we've talked here and there. We did like 3 full sessions and then just a couple of little phone calls. He's like, I'd rather take it from here, Andrew. I'll learn it better if I figure it out on my own. I'm like, okay, have fun.
but again, it's good to have that
Yeah,
someone to lean on, in the beginning, because there
yeah.
will be a lot of questions.
Yeah, he and I, it's more like he just shoots me something. Hey, does that look normal to you? I'm like, yeah, you're good. But he's an animal. Yeah, what he's doing
Oh,
is awesome,
it's a
and
little crazy when I heard
I'm
some
happy to
projects
see him
that
run with it, because very few people just jump in like that. He's so young still. I mean, he's got a very, very bright future in real estate.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, guys, if you want to learn how to build a luxury student rental, how the numbers look like, I have a video on the channel. Check out that video.
Mhm.
It's a great story there. So Suk came back with his question elaborating. So Pace Developments, I think it's a company name, I guess, demanded for an extra 100,000 from clients who
Mhm.
paid deposits on the homes before the pandemic, and the
Right.
developer wants 100K because the prices have gone up in Barrie. So probably now I understood his question. So
Yeah.
probably he's talking about the builder, and I got a call
Yeah.
for one of the property I sold pre-construction for a client. The builder is asking for 25 because the material has gone
Yeah.
up. Uh,
Yeah.
so
That almost feels like a
what's
lawyer
your experience on that?
question, unless there's
Yeah.
see, I just said like I just signed the contract and it had an escalation clause in Florida. They never had that before. That wasn't a thing. But ever since now, like, when everything goes up by 15% every year, now it's going to become a normal thing, an escalation clause. But if you didn't have one, then, I mean, that's a conversation for a lawyer to see if you have some recourse on that. Yeah, that's certainly unfortunate. Although, it's not something uh, that isn't understandable. Like they would just take a loss if they built it for you, probably at the price that you had signed at. So I think that hopefully there's a nice interim solution there, or a midway solution. I'm just going to switch over my camera here,
Sure.
if it will let
Again,
me.
to add on to what Andrew said, even personally, what we are doing for my client, we are talking to the lawyer, because lawyer can read that clause properly. There are in the clause, based on what clause they included, because generally when you're buying a pre-construction, the lawyers, the builders have their own offer, so they have their own clauses in the offer. So some of the clauses they include such a way that, they have to prove that um, their material has went up by that much money. So just check with your lawyer, see what the lawyer says. And unfortunately there is no straight answer on that one as well.
Yeah, got to get into the
Here, so
details.
yeah, guys, we got another 2-3 minutes here, because I don't want to hold up Andrew here. He's super busy, had a bunch of things. So we'll take 2 or 3 more questions, and we'll call it a night for today. Um, Rami, I was wondering if you guys had an opinion on Windsor London Canadian house prices for next 5 years, considering 2022 interest rate hikes. Really great question. I love to hear your thoughts,
Yeah.
Andrew.
It's I wish I had a crystal ball, right? Like I try and stick to what are the factors.
Mhm.
So the factors are you've got immigration, which drives price up because we just don't have enough supply. We have a very slow planning process in Canada. We have money printing at an insane rate. We have huge supply chain issues, and they're only getting worse. And our entire market operates in supply and demand. Like you have X
Yeah.
number of demand, you have X number of supply. If you reduce supply, then demand stays where it is, but the average price goes up. And with all these factors, people look in terms of alternatives. Like if I can't buy a new home, these new homes went up 100 grand. Those
Yeah.
people who would buy new homes go over and buy resale homes, and they drive those prices up. So I expect to see prices continue to rise. Now, Mark Loeffler and I do these like monthly updates. We just released one, so you can check that out if you want me to
Mhm.
elaborate more here. But we just had a debate on it. Like I think the more affordable cities are poised for more growth. Because that work remote thing has grown. More people are able to work at a distance and maybe go into the office only once a week or once every couple of weeks. So areas like Windsor, I think, are ripe for opportunity. I think Sarnia's, and then you're up north, and other small tertiary markets, like still good towns with good infrastructure, but not your central hubs like Toronto and London that have been hit the most and gone up the most. Because as I say on Mark's show, whenever I go on there, water goes to the lowest point. Eventually, people
Yeah.
realize, hey, if I was in London and now I'm ready to retire, I don't need to be in London anymore. I can sell my house there and buy something with 1,000 square foot more out in the country or out in a smaller town. Then people are starting to make those decisions. So
Yeah.
just knowing that that's going on, I like looking for markets that I think have a lot of solid fundamentals. They're still within driving distance of Toronto. And I can get something at a reasonable price. Hopefully it's on or sewer and city water. I look for things like that, good infrastructure, and it's not going anywhere. And hopefully it just has a mix of economy, like a mix of different industries there. And I'll look at stuff like that, and that's kind of where my head's at. Of course, I'm looking even bigger than that. I'm into the States
Mhm.
now, but with the trailer park I recently bought, same fundamentals. I'm looking all around. What do I believe about that area?
Yeah, I love that. And what do you think about this interest rates hiking? They were projecting that
Yeah.
rates will go up. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, it's a mess. It's just a mess. There's nothing else I can say really.
Yeah.
We have idiots at the wheel in Canada, if we're being blunt. They have no idea. Like they act surprised that we have inflation when they turn on the printing press. I mean, it's very simple. If you have more dollars chasing the same amount of goods, prices go up. If you have more dollars chasing less goods and services, prices go up even more. That's
Yeah.
not rocket science. That's very basic.
Mhm.
So it's nonsense. Um, so is interest rate going to go up? The response to inflation is to increase interest rates. Inflation is a major problem right now, but there's a catch-22 there, because if they raise interest rates, then all the government debt, the interest goes up on that, and now all of a sudden, where do they get that money? They just
Yeah.
spiral more into debt, or they have to raise taxes, which isn't popular. So it's hard to find any recent precedent for what they might do. But I think the printing presses are just going to keep on going, and I don't think in the near future we're going to see any major hike. But I mean, I could say that, but then we could do 1980s style where they jack it to 20%. Can you imagine what would happen, right?
Yeah.
It,
Literally.
it would not be good. So nobody knows, right? Because when you have just asinine people who, sorry if I'm swearing, but if people who just don't
No,
know
no,
what they're
that's
doing and make nonsensical decisions and policy, and they kind of treat people like they're dumb and they can't understand very basic concepts, then how can we trust anything they're going to do in the future? So all I can say is prepare yourself, make sure you got your cash flow, make sure you got your buffer, and you're ready for whatever they're going to throw at you.
Yeah, love that thought process. And so, guys, we'll take a final question here, and then we'll call it tonight. And if you would love to, like, again, Andrew's podcast is such a real solid one. I listen very often. So if you don't know it is, search the Andrew Hines Real Estate Podcast and
Yeah.
follow him on Instagram. You should
Yeah.
find all those links there. We have in the chat box the and Andrew Hines, the
Yeah. Just my
Andrew Hines.
name.
Yeah,
So I'll just, yeah, you can see my last name, how it's spelled there in the background. Yeah, Andrew Hines. If you search that, you'll find my podcast on any of the platforms, Spotify, and you'll find it on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and
yeah,
I have
and
my
I
link tree there with all the other links.
yeah, and I was a guest. I think
Yeah,
for podcast 144 there, so you can check out that
yeah, very
another.
recently. Yeah, so you can
Yeah,
hear Aditya's story as well.
yeah. So last question for the night, Meher. How hard is it to be a real estate agent in starting months? Can I live in my starting months, and any starting tips? Oh, so probably I'll answer this. Um, yeah, Hammer, again, it depends on your personality and how you're preparing. But if you don't want to have too much stress, so that you can focus on client rather than the commission, have, like, access to money, whatever your living cost. Let's say if you need 5,000 a month for your living expenses, like, for your rent, car payments, and your family, everything, make sure you account that and have that money set aside. Like, if you need five now, if you have 50,000 set aside, that means 10 months you don't have to worry about your living expenses. So now go give all in that 10 months. So I'm pretty sure, like, in my first year, um, I don't know what I want to do. I had set a goal that I want to double my salary, and God blessings, and all of your blessings, because all the YouTube followers and social media helped me to make literally four times of that. So if you go all in and people trust you more, but just having that not to worry about the finances will definitely put you in a better position. Hope that answers. So with that, like, Andrew, I really thank you so much for your time. Guys, make sure check out his podcast and follow him on Instagram. There's a lot more nuggets on, if you're interested in learning bird strategies, new construction, US investing, and all those stuff. And see you on the next live, which
Sounds
is on
good.
Thursday. Yep. Have a good night, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, that's pretty much it for today, and we'll see you on the next live, which is coming Thursday. So we have our lives every Thursday, 7 p.m. So I'm gonna bring guests like this, who is experts on different areas, different topics. So if you like this, make sure subscribe, uh, leave a comment, and like. Make sure hit the bell notification, so that that boosts me, gives me motivation to continue to do this lives, and continue to give time, and share more education, so that you can do invest and have a financial freedom. So with that, thank you so much. Have a good night. Take care.